Hi, thanks for joining me in the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. Today I have a guest on my show that I found actually in a Facebook group looking for a podcast guest. She has an incredible story that I'm so interested to hear, and her name is Heather Ford. So, welcome to my show, Heather.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
So, tell me, my show, I was looking for someone that knew someone in a cult or was part of a cult and stuff. And it sounds like your story fits exactly what I was looking for. So, tell me about the cult and like how you were. Tell me your whole story. I want to hear everything.
Okay. Yeah. So, first of all, before I get going, like trigger warning, FYI, big trigger warnings for conversation and topic discussions with suicide and sexual abuse. Um, so I originally was brought into a religious cult via adoption from the foster care system. So my sister and I were adopted from foster care through our biological aunt. And she just went on this whole novel of, well, the Lord told me that they were going to be mine, and went through the whole adoption process, filling out the paperwork. Um, didn't listen or heed to our foster parents' advice, which was like, hey, this is not going to be a good idea. This is not going to be a good fit. Um, because while DCF is for reunification,
Hmm.
um, it's not always the best.
Okay.
And in some people's circumstances, especially for mine. I know others will say different. And I don't want to dive into all that. I don't like we could dive into that whole thing, and that would be
Could
another
be another
topic.
episode, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to like digress, not necessarily. But at the time, yes, it was they were trying to reunificate me with biological family.
Okay.
And sadly, that did not go well. Um, they neglected, DCF basically neglected to do further research into my aunt and the organization that she was involved in.
Okay.
My aunt didn't heed to any of the whole, well, take trauma classes. How are you going to handle Heather and
Yep.
Nicole's trauma? How are you going to be able to handle that? Because when you're taking in kids from foster care, you have to be able to handle their trauma, and look at it as trauma, not them having meltdowns or having a fit because they're not getting their way.
And
Um,
Nicole's your sister?
and my sister was a year and 3 months older than me.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so fast forward through, 1994, adoption went through. She came and got us. And the abuse started immediately. The physical abuse, the mental
How old were you
abuse.
at the time?
I was 8. My sister would have been 10.
Okay.
Okay, so we were adopted. I was adopted at 8, and just my aunt was very, very abusive with me, physically abusive with me, throwing me up against walls, casting demons out of me, type kind of thing. And then as time went on, it just got worse and worse and worse. And then when I was 12 or 13, that's when things really started changing, and things really started getting to that level of something is off. My aunt was spending more time in the cult building. Um, Services were going longer. So just to give an idea of how long the Sunday service went from, that is still going. It starts at 10 in the morning and it ends at 5 at night.
Wow.
So really, that's a whole work day without a lunch break. And for a child to be subject to that is abuse.
And what are
And
they doing during that between 10 and 5 on a Sunday? Like, what's happening?
oh, it's so roughly it would be probably an hour of music, give or take, kind of like the first, like just like any other church. When you walk
Yeah.
in, they do
Mhm.
like their music first, they do their worship or whatever, and that's what and then it turns into, okay, there's like some prayer or deliverance time, give or take, however they want to do that, and then there's like at least a 4-hour sermon just on a scripture alone. So let's just say, for example, he dives into the book of Isaiah, Isaiah chapter 64 or whatever. He'll hone in on that whole chapter for 4 hours.
Wow. And so
So
you're just sitting there listening to him the whole time talk about this?
we had no choice. We had no choice. And
Okay.
so we're just like, and we had no, and we kind of had to be attentive because we were asked on the ride home, oh, hey, well, what did you learn from today's sermon? And so if we fell asleep, we're kind of screwed. So I'd have my notebook and I would be like, every now and then I'd like take a note and I'm like, okay, just enough to like
Yeah,
say
to be able
like
to
this
say
is what I
something.
learned. But I'm like, yeah, to be subject to a service where it's an 8 hour thing, that is neglect and abuse on, I don't care how you package that. That is abuse and neglect for a child. And that went on every Sunday. And then Wednesday service, Friday night service, Sunday night service. So Sunday we'd end at 5 and my aunt would be in the office in the front office with the cult leaders, counting the offering plate. Now, there was only one offering plate and only 5 or 6 families. So, with 5 or 6 families and only one offering plate and two grown adults in each family, like, it doesn't take you 3 hours and not 2 hours to count
Yeah.
an offering plate. Okay. It's common sense, people. And so I would have to be sitting in the sanctuary waiting for her to finish. So by the time we got home, it was about 5:45 or 6 o'clock. We'd wolf down dinner, turn around, come back for an evening service, which started at 6:30 and wouldn't end until 11 o'clock at night.
So what are they trying to, are they just telling you stories from the Bible? Like what's happening? Like what are they trying to get out of these marathon sermons?
So mainly it's all about calling people out. So in a sense, it's a sermon, okay, whatever it is. And I don't. It's been a hot minute since I've dug into the Bible, but it's a call out of individuals who they think are sinning or not living the life that they're supposed to according to
Okay.
God. So prime example would be me, and that would be, well, you're not being obedient to the Lord, and so they'll find whatever scripture and they'll call that out indirectly or directly, and then they'd have a whole deliverance service of where they make you come up to the altar and pray or seek deliverance, and they are literally rubbing olive oil on my body, casting demons out of me, forcing me to throw up. And this just wasn't the kids, it was adults that they were doing this to as well. um
So as a 12 or 13-year-old child, like what are you thinking that these adults are doing to you? Or do you know it's wrong somewhere in your head, right? I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely. Like something's not right. But as a child, I'm not allowed to say anything. I'm not allowed to
yeah.
question it because when you're in an organization like that, you are not allowed to question it. You're not allowed to say anything. You're not allowed to speak up because they use fear, manipulation tactics to keep you quiet. And that's what they do. And that's currently what they're still doing. Is
What's the
keeping
name of the organization?
Praise, Power, and Prayer Temple in Windsor, Connecticut.
Oh, it's in Connecticut. Okay, that's interesting. Where are you? Are you in Connecticut still?
No.
Okay.
Uh,
Um,
I am not. I am no longer on the East Coast. And just for my safety, I don't want to
yeah, you don't
disclose.
have to say. Because I live in Boston, so it's just kind of crazy to me that
Yep.
it's not. It's between New York and Boston. So it's
Yes.
kind of crazy that that's happening in Connecticut. I thought you were going to say like I don't know,
Texas.
somewhere in the west, out west, somewhere in
Nope.
Arizona, in the middle of the desert or something. This was happening.
Nope. Straight up in Windsor, Connecticut, of all
Wow.
places. Yep. And and here's the thing, like there's a whole cult forum dedicated to praise, power, and prayer of like other like people who joined or like and left, and they actually spilled the beans on what really went on behind the closed doors. So there's a whole cult forum website dedicated to them.
Wow. Okay. So besides going to these crazy marathon church sermons and stuff, and your aunt being physically abusive to you and your sisters, what else was going on? I mean, this just sounds like an insane life, especially for a 12 or 13-year-old. I mean,
Yeah. And so at the age of 13, I was being sexually abused by one of the pastors there at the time. My aunt was allowing it. She allowed him in the home, and it was happening for 7 years.
but
Nobody
she knew it
knew.
was happening and didn't stop it.
No, she didn't stop it at all. In fact, actually, there was a Wednesday night service where she actually took a confession from him. And it was his turn to have a deliverance service, and he basically, and I don't recall like how it all came about, but it
Mhm.
basically was like he had admitted to inappropriately touching his daughters.
His daughters.
Hmm. And he has six daughters, and I know all of his children just because we all went to the same school. The school's in the same building, like we were around each other 7 days a week. So I know his children. Um, and it's not too far fetched at all with that statement that absolutely they were abused. And my aunt took that confession, a recorded and written confession, of him basically saying, "Yeah, I was inappropriate with my daughters." And
And what was his wife
oh,
doing?
his wife, you know, I want to say she was somewhere in the building, and I don't recall where. But they brushed it off as this was an issue between him and God, because someone actually told my aunt, like, "Hey, this needs to be reported," and my aunt was like, "No, this is an issue between him and God. He needs to take a seat and do some soul searching with God and get right back with God and have a time of a reflection of where he steps down, so a time where he steps down as being a pastor for a time period, and then he has to kind of earn his way back into being a pastor by showing the congregation and the elders that, like, hey, yeah, my behavior's changed, I've repented, I've gotten right with the Lord, and he's been forgiven. And that's where they go, and that's why I never reported it. I wasn't even allowed to report it.
Yeah.
um but the reason why I wasn't allowed to report it was because they believe that they are forgiven by God, and that's all that they need.
So you can do whatever you want to someone or
Mhm.
anything in the world, and as long as you're saying that you're forgiven by God, then it's
Yep,
okay.
yep. Then you're fine, and there's no consequences.
And
Um,
how many people were in the cult?
so there's about 5 or 6 families. Right now, it's one family, but
And are they like kind of secluding you from the rest of the world? Like what's kind of happening? Like are you kind of secluded from everyone else, or do you have other friends and stuff that you can like reach out to that's outside of the cult when you're 12 or 13?
no, there's nobody. The only people we had are the people inside the cult. So all the families and all their kids. That was it. But even then, we weren't allowed to say anything. We weren't allowed to disclose information. I attempted to run away from home a couple of times. Um, but then obviously I came to my senses with that and was like, yeah, this probably isn't going to be a good idea. So yeah, you're not allowed to disclose. You're not allowed to talk about it. They don't want you to talk to law enforcement or anybody on the outside world.
And oh, on the outside world. So like you wouldn't go to like the grocery store with your aunt to get food or anything like that, or were you allowed to do stuff like that at
Oh
least?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we lived when I say normal life, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, we were they weren't they're not like anti-medicine or anti-medical help
Okay.
or anything like that. Like they're not like that. Like, yeah, they grocery shopping and stuff like that. It was just you had to be a certain way. So when you go to like when we go to the grocery store, like we were given the talk of like being on your best and staying focused on getting groceries. It wasn't mainly like and it wasn't, I guess I should say, like, really, it was when we were visiting other people or there
Yeah.
were outsiders coming in is when we had to be quiet and like we weren't
Okay.
allowed to say anything.
And were the other kids that from the other 5 or 6 families, were they also being abused?
um
I mean, I know
so
the 6 daughters were, but any of the other families, like, were they going through the sexual or mental or physical abuse?
so as far as the sexual, I can't speak on that. I can speak on my what happened to me. As far as like the emotional abuse and the spiritual abuse, absolutely.
And was there any ever times when you were with these other kids where you're kinda just, like, you were testing the waters to see if anybody would even acknowledge that this wasn't right, and maybe, you were kinda trying to come up with a plan with the other kids to get out of there together or something, or it's just like you're just too scared to do that, or you're a kid and you don't
We're,
think that?
we're too scared. I
Yeah.
mean, all of the kids, like specifically the two pastors involved, like one of them, like all of his kids are still heavily involved. And the other ones, I think, were just too scared, and that's why we don't report it. Is they're too scared to come forward.
And
The
do you know how your
repercussions.
aunt got into this cult? Like, how did she meet these people and get into it? Do you know? Do you have that history?
So she got involved. Actually through friends, really. It was a friend of hers that was going there at the time, and the actual leader of the organization is in New Jersey.
Okay.
So the actual church is in New Jersey, and they just did a branch off in Connecticut. So there's like a whole different, there's a leader, and then there's, another leader that took over in Connecticut. So there's two different states, two different locations. um, but yeah, she got involved through a friend who at the time started off as a regular church,
Yeah.
started off as a good thing, and then I think it just led to one thing after another, and she got too involved, and it just got to the point where she was allowing a pastor to sexually abuse me.
And was she married? Did you have an uncle or
Nope, never married. Nope, nope.
and like what were the other families like? I mean, what were they saying? And was there anything like were they making you dress a certain way? Was there anything weird like that happening, or were you free to kind of dress the way you wanted to? Like, tell me about.
So it was a strict dress code. It was a very so it's interesting because yes, it was a strict dress code, but no. So my aunt was very, she always told us like, hey, like so some during services, yes, you had to wear skirts and dresses. Absolutely.
Mhm.
That was a given, no jeans. But as far as being outside the cult building, like she was kind of lenient because she's like, I don't want, because of our background, she was like, I don't want to be that person that forces you, like, you have to wear dresses. Like, if you want to wear jeans, you should wear jeans. Just Sundays and services and whatnot, you're going to wear skirts and dresses.
Right.
So I find it interesting. But she was very like, anytime we went shopping, um, for jeans and whatnot, it was, you can wear jeans, but they can't be tight fitting, and they have to be loose. Um, Tops have to be, they can't be sleeveless,
Yeah.
and they can't be this, and you can't have buttons undone. Same with our school uniforms, um, below the knee, and everything had to be buttoned up. And so yes and no, it was strict because my aunt, obviously in the home, oh yeah, we wore sweatpants and we wore jeans and we wore
Okay.
shorts, and but the shorts had to be below the knee kind of thing. So it was controlled to an extent. And then obviously now that I'm gone, I don't wear, we're good. I don't have any issues, but it was controlled for sure. Absolutely everything that we wore,
And
it was controlled.
what did your aunt do like for a job? Like what did she do for money?
She actually works for um Aetna, like a
Yeah.
insurance
Insurance?
agency in Hartford. At the time, that's what she was there. That's what she was doing. Really good team she had, whatnot. And so yeah, when she was working, I was at school. We were at school. And then when she was not working, she was over at Praise, Power, and Prayer.
It's so weird that somebody I could be working with my office could be in a cult because like she sounds like she's a normal person going to work at a major company and then yet she's got all these secrets that she has at home.
Yep.
That's so bizarre.
Yep.
And so tell me how you finally got out of it. Like how did you escape? How old were you and did your sister come with you?
So my sister escaped May of 2022.
Oh, so
Um,
that recently.
yeah, or not?
Wow.
No, sorry, not 2022. May. Sorry, I have all my dates mixed up. May of 2002. Sorry,
Oh,
2000.
2002. Okay, okay.
2002. 2002. She got away. Basically, she had just finished her freshman year of college, and my aunt was demanding her to come home. Uh, my sister wasn't having that. and she found a job on campus, and they're like, hey, like, because you found a job on campus, you could stay on campus, you get free housing. My sister's like, heck yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
She found a job through public safety, which led her to actually working for Boston Police Department. And my aunt flipped her shit and was like, no, you're done. So ultimately, she left, and then she was excommunicated. She actually came home. She came home a couple weeks later to get all her stuff, to find it thrown out on the front lawn. All like the bedroom had been repainted, the furniture had been replaced, like as if my sister didn't exist. Okay. So in a nutshell, that's how she got out.
Okay.
I escaped, or I attempted to escape in 2006.
Okay.
Um, Basically, my aunt had taken me out of a special needs program, actually in Boston, Massachusetts. Um, and basically was like, you're not living the way you're supposed to be. I'm taking you out because you're not basically living, breathing, preaching Jesus on the campus. And then there was just like this all this other control with
Yeah.
the program that she was having issues with. Like she is like, they did an outing, like a class outing to Salem, Massachusetts, and my aunt literally
Oh,
wouldn't refuse to let me go. They
because of
were
the witch
doing
thing.
right. And then they were one of the classes in this program is sex education. And my aunt was livid. She's like, I don't understand why this needs to be taught. Like, this isn't something you need to be learning. Whole 9 yards. So my aunt was pulling strings, and she eventually took me out. Um, because I wasn't living up to the cult rules.
Okay.
And it was pretty violent. She left me at a hotel on the side of a freeway in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and was like, you have 3 nights to get right with the Lord. I will come back and get your stuff. Got home, she then was like, you're not welcomed in the home. Like, you can sleep in your room, but I don't want your stuff here. Um,
And how old were
Taken
you?
what you Oh, I don't want to disclose my age.
No, no. How old were you then when that was happening?
I was a child. I was under the age of 19.
I can't believe this. I mean, this is insane that this person. I'm so sorry. That is
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. And so then she was like, you're not to be left alone in the house. And so she would drop me off at the mall, at shopping malls, from 7 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night, making me find work. Now, keep in mind, I have a special needs diagnosis. I was born borderline mental retardation, so I didn't know how to fill out a job application. None less, I didn't know basic math, right? And so here I was roaming the mall, with no food, no access to food, like no money for food, which is neglect. I don't care how you look at that. It doesn't. It, and here's what I want to drive home: it doesn't matter how old you are.
Yeah.
It does not matter. I could have been, especially when you're a special needs child, it does not matter. She signed that paperwork for life. And as my guardian, it was her job to help me, even at the age of 21, 20, 19, 18. It doesn't matter how old.
Yeah.
Like, abuse is abuse, neglect is neglect.
Yeah.
So and so, yeah, she was being neglectful and abusive. So I would go 8 hours a day not eating because she wouldn't give me money for food. And so I had finally found a job. I had found something. And that night, she's like, okay, we're going to be late for church. So we get in the car. And I was like, shit, like, it's going to go down. I get there, and Ray McMahon, who is the leader
Uh-huh.
of Praise, Power, and Prayer in Windsor, Connecticut, had already gotten the 411 on me. And it was just a whole thing. It was really bad. Long story made short, end of the service, we get home, and my aunt was on a rampage of like, well, who are you talking to? You shouldn't be talking to anybody. You need to be getting right with the Lord. I was in contact with my birth mom at the time,
Okay.
and an ex cult member, or an ex member at the time, because
Okay.
I was trying to tell them what was going on, let them know that I wasn't feeling safe. But my aunt was picking up on that, and she didn't want that being exposed. So anytime abuse is trying to be exposed, they will pull all the cards. Um, And so I was in the kitchen and I had had enough, and I put a butcher knife to my throat in attempt to take my own life. And then she called the cops, and after that, it's all history. I went under 48-hour watch. And after I was cleared, she told me that I was not welcome back in her home because I had sinned and that I needed to repent of adultery, which, side note, if you know what adultery is, let's look at that. Like, that's not what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to go to say that adultery was happening, because I don't want to give Al Aldridge that power, who is the
Yeah.
one that was sexually abusing me. That's not sexually abusing a child. That's not adultery. That's a crime.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a crime. That is a crime. Had there been no child involved and he was just willy nillying it on his own and he's a grown ass adult, that's on him. But when you touch a child like that, that's a crime.
Yeah. He's a pedophile.
That's a pet. That is a crime. And you can't, nobody can sit here and argue with me with that. And like, stop biblicizing it.
No, it's a
Yes.
hundred. I think everybody would agree that is a complete crime. So,
That is a crime.
so, how did you end up being able to leave, like, and escape from her and the cult?
When the cops showed up,
Oh,
I literally ran up to my room, and I was trying to hide in my closet because I was scared. And there was a female and male officer and was like, listen, like, obviously something's going on. They're like, hey, we can take you or you can go willingly. And I said, get me out of here. I will go. So I went willingly to get under 48-hour watch in a psych unit.
okay.
So that's ultimately how I got out.
And then
Uh,
after the 48 hours was up, you just didn't go back.
no, she wouldn't let me.
Okay, so then what did you do? Or you just like, where did
I
you live?
I had no choice. Like, I literally, so it went like this. So the social worker was pissed and was like, I want to talk to your aunt. Get on the phone with her. Let's just say the social worker had some very colorful words to say and
Okay.
basically said, hey, if you're not going to take her home, which you should do, you need to take her somewhere. So I get cleared to go. Her and Ray McMahon show up. They drop me off at a homeless shelter in Manchester, Connecticut at 10 o'clock at night.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry for you. I feel so bad that you had to go through this. This is
10 o'clock at
heartbreaking.
night. 2 days later, Ray McMahon shows up in his 15-passenger van with my aunt and dumps all my stuff sitting in the parking lot of the homeless shelter. And I have proof of this. Like, I have pictures and everything.
And then from there, like, how did you get out of the homeless shelter and start having a normal life? Like, what was your steps to
So
becoming?
my birth mom actually came and got me. She
Okay.
drove from Maine to Connecticut, and my sister, because at the time, so during that whole time frame that I was in the homeless shelter and being evaluated and all that, like, my sister, like, nobody was stepping up. Not my bio dad, nobody. Now my bio dad was like, hey, what Cynthia's doing to you is absolutely wrong. I don't agree with it. So he was verbally backing me up, but he wasn't actually doing anything to help me. Nobody from no ex members from the cult. Like, I think they were just too scared to do anything or to help
Mhm.
me. And my sister wasn't necessarily, I think she was trying the best she could in this situation. And she's like, listen, Heather, if our birth mom is offering to come get you, go. It's not ideal. And in any other circumstances, I would say, hell no, don't go. But
Mhm.
in this situation, go. So I
Why
went.
did she give you up for adoption in the beginning?
Bio mom did not give me up. Actually, her rights were terminated.
Okay.
So my birth mom is an alcoholic, still
Okay.
is. And the judge, caseworkers, social workers gave her ample opportunity
Okay.
to get her shit together, so to speak. So as somebody who was an alcoholic or is an alcoholic and their kids are being taken, DCF gives them chances to, hey, let's get this together. Let's
Mhm.
get you sober so that way you can be a proactive parent. So you
Okay.
can parent your children, so you
Yeah.
can have your kids back. And in my situation, she was not doing that. She was not even willing to do it. It was a battle. It was an uphill battle. It was a fight every freaking day. And finally, DCF was like, "You're done." After like the eighth or
Got
ninth
it.
chance, like, "You're done. Like, you've put your kids in danger. You're abusing them. You're allowing somebody to hurt them." And so her rights were terminated.
And are you and your sister close today? Are you in contact?
So, um, there's no easy way to say this, but my sister took her life 14 months ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I did not expect that. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yep.
And where is your aunt today?
Goodyear, Arizona.
And is she still part of this cult or she has left it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. She's 100%. So she's actually involved in two churches. Um, and I'm not sure how the two connect, but she lives in Goodyear, Arizona, which after she dumped us and left us and abandoned us, she moved to Arizona, like repainted all the bedrooms, got rid of our shit, moved to Goodyear, Arizona, which is where the leader of Praise, Power, and Prayer lives. So Martha Davis, who is the cult leader of the New Jersey organization, moved
Mhm.
out to Arizona. So she moved out to Goodyear, Arizona, and she found a church in Avondale, Arizona. So I don't know how the two connect, but absolutely she still has connections with Praise, Power, and Prayer. She still has connections to both New Jersey and Connecticut locations.
And I don't want to focus on your sister too much, but did she take her life because of the upbringing that she had and all was that related to it?
Some of it. Some of
Okay.
it. Yeah, so she worked for Boston Police Department.
Mhm.
She was a 911 dispatcher.
Mhm.
Um, she actually wanted to be a cop really, really bad. And her eyesight, unfortunately, for working for Boston Police Department, you have to have like immaculate eyesight. And she didn't pass that. And so she's like, well, I can get in being a dispatcher. And so they gave her the hardest station to work with,
Okay.
which is Dorchester. So, I mean, you're in Boston, so you know.
Yeah.
Dorchester and all of that area is not the best. So she was handling that station, and she was there for the Boston Marathon. She took a lot of calls for that. And she was just like, "Hey, that's like a day of celebration for everybody, but for me, like that just brings a lot of shit."
Yeah.
But what ultimately, and I noticed then that's where she was having a lot of PTSD and trauma. I'd be on the phone with her and she would snap and say something. I'm like, "It sounds like you're going through like some trauma and PTSD." And I never like pushed her to get help. I think I asked once, like, "Hey, like, are you talking to somebody?" But I never, because I was messed up myself at that time. Like, my sister and I were very toxic for each other. We were
Yeah.
not at the best. And so I didn't, knowing that where I was like, I can't encourage her to do something where I'm a hot mess myself. And
Yeah.
so I kind of just let slide anyway. And so what ultimately led her to end her life was she took a call. A few years ago, she had taken a call, routine traffic stop, and her fellow officer had been shot at the routine traffic stop. And she ultimately saved his life. Like, she closed down all of Boston just to get him to a hospital. Um, and so and she was having triggers, flashbacks, her outer body experience. And had a lot of PTSD with that. And she had reached out at least 5 times for help and was not given the help that she needed. Um, and then on top of all of that, she was dealing with some relationship stuff with her ex. Um, she had moved out to South Dakota and was involved with somebody there, and that didn't go well. And she ended up moving back home to Maine, which I was like shocked. I was like, okay.
Mhm.
Had taken a job at Target, a security job at Target, which I was like, what? That's not Nicole. And ultimately she missed 2 days of work and a birthday party because she took her life the day before her 41st birthday. So her birthday is August 3rd. She took it August 2nd. So there was just a lot. And then here she is on Instagram stalking my account, watching my story of everything that Praise, Power, and Prayer did to me. And so I think that there's a lot of triggers there. And I think that me talking about it triggered her own shit. So it's a combination of everything. It's not just, yeah, she was depressed, but I
Mhm.
think we all know that depression is just a sliver of
Yeah.
that. It's
Yeah.
not the root issue of why she took her life. And I think people need to understand that. Like, yeah, it wasn't her depression that took her, it was the underlying issues of not healing from trauma, not healing from being abused at Praise, Power, and Prayer. And then my aunt had the audacity to show up at her funeral service. And thankfully, my foster parents were had security and had her removed. They had a picture of her and were like, "Yeah, you need to go. You're not welcome." She tried to get in and was like, and they were like, "No, you have to go." So goes to show you where my aunt is. Like, she's still on the whole like,
And have you gotten therapy yourself? Like, have you done that for yourself?
oh yeah, absolutely. I've been in therapy my whole, I want to say almost my whole life. Like, I was
Yeah.
in therapy. Actually, our foster family had us in therapy. And then when aunt took us, she took us out of therapy because
Okay.
Praise, Power, and Prayer does not believe in psychiatric help
Okay.
therapy. And I'm not saying like, oh, like Heather needed to be on medications and
Mhm.
in a
Yeah.
psych ward. No, 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 no. But what I needed was is trauma therapy,
Mhm.
not biblical. Biblical therapy is not therapy. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is not counseling. And I really just needed trauma therapy, and they were against that. And my aunt had this whole thing in her head of like, oh, I can heal, I can save Heather and heal Heather by having her delivered and set free, under the Lord, under the whatever. And she quickly found out that that's how that went. And so, yeah, I've been in therapy since I left. I've had all kinds of therapy. I've had talk therapy. I've had art therapy. I've had EMDR, which is a really, really good trauma therapy.
Mhm.
Although you have to be ready to do that because that's a lot. And I'm currently in hypnosis therapy,
What is
which is
EMDR? Can you give me a little explanation about what that is?
so yeah, EMDR, it's basically like an eye movement coordination deal. I forget the actual name of it, but it's like eye movement something. I don't know.
Okay.
And so there's a couple ways that you can go about that. They'll move your finger, like they'll move their finger back and forth like that. For me, that was super triggering, which made me feel not ready. But then they have these sensors that you can hold in your hand, or underneath your leg, and they'll go back to an event. Um, Whatever that is, and they'll work through that event. I'm like, okay, what were you wearing, what was around you, who was with you?
Mhm.
Like, they'll try to get through to work through. The idea of it is to lessen the trigger, is to lessen that trauma, so that way you can kind of, and I hate saying moving on with your life, but
Yeah.
like move past it
Past it.
so it's
Mhm.
not haunting you and traumatizing you. It's the same with hypnosis therapy, but only hypnosis is a little different, where she takes me on a whole meditation, and then takes me on like an inner child meditation, and she'll be like, okay, well, at what age did you feel abandoned? And you just say whatever age comes to mind. And then through that, you'll be like, okay, what happened? What incident happened? And what did you do? How did you react? And then she'll do like an adult meditation, and then she'll be like, okay, well, now as an adult, as a wise adult, like, what would have been a better way to like say what you were wanting to say? It's
Mhm.
kind of like it's really it's really trippy. Like, you'd have to be there to witness it, but it's like a whole thing. And it's powerful, and it does work, but you have to be ready for
Ready
it.
for it. Okay.
You have to be ready to do. If you're not ready to do trauma therapy, then don't do it, because you're gonna push your trauma more. It's one of those, like, you have to be actually ready to do it.
And let me ask you a couple more questions. How do you feel about religion today?
I hate it.
Okay.
I
So you
hate
don't
it.
believe in any of it now at this point, right?
No, I'm like, get me the f away from it. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm like, disgusting. It's disgusted. I spent a lot of my life around it
Yeah.
because it's what was comfortable, it's what I knew, it's what I thought I had to do,
Mhm.
all of the above. And I lived my life living controlled, of like, this is what you're supposed to do. Like, you're supposed to surrender your trauma to God, which is what Christians believe,
Mhm.
or yield it to the Lord, or let God have justice. Okay, well, I tried that for over 21 years, and where has it gotten me? Nowhere.
And is there no is this leader still doing this same thing? Is he still most likely abusing children? Is he still, I mean, he's the cult leader still, right? So has he ever been made accountable for what he did to you and other children? Has it, and can you do anything about it?
So yeah, that's actually a great segue into all of that, because in 2020 I broke my silence publicly. I went public with it. Okay. And but I didn't go public with it at first because in 2017 I started having memories of Al Aldridge sexually abusing me, and of course I wanted to talk to my therapist about it first. And at
Mhm.
the time when my sister was alive, I needed to talk to her, you know, not that I needed anyone to be like, oh my God, not that I needed advice or anything like that, but I
Mhm.
wanted to, that's a big thing to say, right? And
Yeah,
it's a big thing to
absolutely.
say somebody did something. And because of my trauma, I wanted to sit down with a therapist and be like, hey, I'm having these recollections. I'm having this memory of Al Aldridge, and I need you to help me work through it, because if this really did happen, I need to say something. And sure enough, I was having nightmares of him. And sure enough, working through therapy, things were coming up. And sure enough, it came to the conclusion that this did happen.
Mhm.
And so I had actually written Al Aldridge a letter. Um, I had sent it to him in 2019, with no return address, just because, for one, safety reasons, and two, I didn't necessarily want a response from him, but I wanted him to know that I knew. Like, I know you did this, and you're going to be held accountable. So in 2020, I was introduced to TikTok, where I found all the support in the world, and I put them on full blast. I literally have pictures of Al Aldridge on my social media, and I know that's going to come back probably and bite me in the ass, and I don't care, because at this point, um, if he were going to come after me legally, he would have done that in 2020.
I don't think it will bite you, because I don't think he's not, because look what he did, and he knows it was
Right.
wrong.
And he
So
knows it's
because
wrong. And so here's the thing. So I start calling him out, letting people know what he did with this picture.
okay,
His youngest daughter reaches out to me on Facebook. And I was like, oh shit, like, here we go. I knew this was going to happen, just a matter of what the response was.
okay.
So basically, her response was, hey, my sisters and I have seen your videos of our dad. First of all, we're really sorry that he did that to you. Second of all, we 100% support you.
That's awesome. That must have
So,
gave you so much joy, right? To know that you had the support from his daughters.
not even a joy, just a relief.
A
And
relief, I should say. Yeah.
all of that right there, just those words spoke volumes.
Mhm.
And that, you want to know if they were abused? That answer right there said everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, they have asked, they're like, please don't tag us and stuff. Please don't name our names, because there will be repercussions for us. And
Yeah.
there is, which is why I've always kept them private. And it's interesting because they're like, there's no need to involve us. Well, they're already involved. I just don't say their names because they're victims of it too.
Yeah.
I can't drag them to go to the police department and make a report. I can't make them turn
Mhm.
against their father. I can encourage them, but at the end of the day, that's on them. And they may take it to the grave. I don't know. My heart breaks for his daughters because I've known them personally. I grew up with them,
Mhm.
and I saw firsthand what it was like in their household, because I spent a lot of time in their house. And so I saw firsthand how Al Aldridge interacts with his daughters, and it was disgusting. And I wasn't allowed to say anything because I was a child.
Yeah.
But that alone. So yes, I have called Al Aldridge out. Since I've been calling him out, he has sent me death threats. He has taken down my content. He actually, the death threat that he actually sent somebody to my house. Then when I actually flew out to Connecticut in 2022, to confront Ray and Al. And Al showed up at my hotel room. trying to break in. And when I went to the office, they were like, "Oh, that was housekeeping." I'm like,
Mhm,
3 o'clock in the afternoon, that's not housekeeping.
mhm.
And then when I got to Praise, Power, and Prayer, Ray McMahon was gone. So obviously they were tipped off. Um, clearly. Now, Al Aldridge is no longer with Praise, Power, and Prayer. He actually got kicked out. He and his family got kicked out a couple years before I did,
Okay.
um, because of, his sin or whatnot. Um, does his wife absolutely know that he was sexually abusing me now? Absolutely. I would say back then she didn't know, but now that I've brought this all out in the open, oh yeah, she knows now.
And there's
Uh,
nothing like the FBI or the police or whoever could do anything to prosecute them at this point?
so I made a police report in 2020.
Okay.
Went, spoke with a detective, and she was like, what's the name of the organization? And I told her, she's like, oh shit, yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. Um, statute of limitations sucks. I'm just gonna say.
There's a
So,
statute of limitations for abusing children?
mhm, yep.
What is it?
So from what I understand, so in Connecticut, there's really no statute of limitations for sexual abuse. Like you
Okay.
can report anytime. That's from what I'm understanding. But because I was a child, you have they told me you had 3 weeks to report before the time frame is up.
I
And
can't
because
that is unbelievable.
yeah, and so because I wasn't allowed to report it,
And you're a child, you
that time
shouldn't.
frame, the statute of limitations is up.
That law needs to be
So
looked at 100%.
a
I mean,
hundred percent. So here I am. I'm like, okay, what do I do? What are my next options? Like,
yeah,
do I sue Praise Power and Prayer? Do I go after my aunt? Now, I have a case with my aunt. Absolutely. There's the whole leaving a disabled child homeless and abusing a disabled child.
yeah.
So there is that segue. But here's the thing. You know, I spent literally 2 years trying to get a lawyer, and it took everything out of me. And so I kind of put a halt to it, like put it on the back burner, because I was like, okay, I need to do some more work. I need to do some more healing. I need to work through this, and I need to get my story out there. And so now here I am doing all these podcast interviews, writing my book, and trying to get this out there. Ray McMahon is still the leader of Praise, Power, and Prayer. He is the principal of Praise, Power, and Prayer Christian School. It literally, all Praise, Power, and Prayer Temple is made up of is the McMahon family. It's literally he, his wife. He had manipulated all of his children to leave their college education degree jobs and teach at Praise, Power, and Prayer Christian School. And all of his grandchildren, most of his grandchildren attend that school. Um, is there abuse going on? Probably. I'm not there to prove it. Does it need to be looked into? Absolutely. But because it's a private religious school, I wouldn't even know where to go. I wouldn't even
Yeah.
know how to go about that. Ray McMahon is a pretty popular and powerful name. His family knows, he's very well known in town.
And are you scared today still? Like one day they're gonna just show up at your house or find out where you are, and do you are you always looking behind your back?
Um, Not necessarily, because here's the thing. Well, with Ray, yeah. But without Aldridge, like he knows he ain't got nothing on me. Like at this point, like bring it on. But I I have called them out, and I continue to call them out because nobody else is holding these people accountable. And
Yeah.
there are people that know what he did to me, and they still say nothing. Ray McMahon denies that he ever left me homeless, which I find funny because I have not only evidence, but I'm like, okay, so that if it wasn't you that dumped all my stuff off sitting in the parking lot of the homeless shelters, then who was it? Because it wasn't me. That means I would have had to have walked from Windsor to Manchester. Like that's a long walk.
Yeah,
And if
yeah.
my aunt is already saying that you're there, hello. Um, so my aunt's already taken that accountability. She won't take the legal accountability. Like she's refused to answer the detective's phone calls and emails. But she's already owned it with me. Like, yeah, I allowed it. I knew it was going on.
Did she
Um,
ever remotely have any remorse or say that she was sorry at all?
she said she was sorry, and then it quickly rebutted to, I was doing what I thought was best as a single parent because you were so out of control. I thought I was dealing with a spiritual issue. Yeah, let's dissect that out of control. I was a traumatized child, dealing with trauma that had not been healed or talked about. So I wasn't necessarily out of control. I was just traumatized. So, um, yeah. So there's not really been accountability. Like there's been no like Ray McMahon hasn't come forward, and it's so interesting because they're very, he and Al are very quick to jump on my lives and like try to silence me and keep me quiet, and shut everything down, and take my content down. But they have not yet gotten the balls to actually say, I did this and I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Do you want to promote your TikTok and have people go there and hear more about your story?
Absolutely. Because I am
Okay.
on, I'm on
Yeah.
TikTok. I'm on Instagram.
Yeah.
At this point, blow it up.
Tell us your TikTok name. Tell us your Instagram name, and let people go and
Yeah.
see it.
So my TikTok, when it's active and when I'm not suspended, it's working. So it is a religious cult survivor 06. And then my Instagram is religious cult survivor 1006.
Okay, that's great. I will also put this in the description of the podcast and put it into my social media so people can go out and see your story. Okay, so tell me about the book. You're writing a book. How far are you into the book, and when do you think you're gonna? And do you have a publisher? Are you going to be shopping it around? Like, tell us about
So
that.
yeah, I started writing book back in May. I mean I had started writing a book a
Is it
couple of years ago.
therapeutic to write this book?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I started actually years ago, and just what I kept getting interrupted, things kept happening, and I was like, okay, not the right time. And so finally, now that my sister's gone, I'm like, okay, I have to pick this up again. And it's interesting because I get asked a lot, like when I started talking about what happened, back in 2020, people were like, well, did this happen to your sister? And I would respectfully decline to answer because I'm like, that's not for me to share.
Hmm.
And I want to protect my sister. And now that she's gone, I'm like, well, it's kind of like up for grabs at this point.
Yeah.
And so the intent of sharing part of my story and my sister's story isn't to shame my sister, isn't to put her in a negative light or anything like that. It's just to share another side of another side of my sister, because everyone saw her heroic side working with the Boston police and how she, and that's true, but there was another side of her that people don't know about. And so sharing that and shedding light on that as her sister, um, I just want people to be informed. And so, yeah, this is going to be a memoir, a tell all of what my aunt and what Ray McMahon and Al Aldridge have done to me. Names are going to be put there, places, everything. Now, I've gotten some legal advice because I was like, I don't want to be sued. But I was told actually, as long as there's been a police report or some kind of investigation, you can absolutely name the name of the organization, and you can name the names. It's when it hasn't been investigated or anything like that. So in this case, yes, I will cite the police report and everything like that. I'll post the pictures of what they did. So yeah, this is not a comic. This is a tell all of two cult leaders who abused me. And one of them is still active at Praise Power and Prayer. And so yeah, it's a tell all of what my sister and I went through, the details of how we got out, how we got in, and what ultimately where I am now. So,
And when do
um,
you think the book will be out?
I don't know at this point because I'm about 11 chapters in.
Okay.
Um, and I've gone back and forth with like, how big or how long does this book need to be? And I just, obviously it's not necessarily the length of the chapter, it's what's written in the chapter. And
Yeah.
so there's going to be a lot of pictures, there's going to be a lot of artwork. I do a lot of artwork that's going to be included in the book. So I don't know, I'm on like my 11th and 12th chapter. um
I
I
think it'd
like
be
it.
a great story for a movie, though, or a mini series on Netflix or something. I mean, it sounds
A
pretty.
Series? Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
a doc series,
Absolutely.
exactly. It
And
sounds
that's the thing,
pretty.
like, I've tried to get a hold of Dr. Phil. Like, I've reached out to him, I've reached out to Dateline, and I've gotten nothing. So
What
I'm
about,
about
like, Netflix? Have you reached out to them? Maybe once you write your book, that's probably when you'll get a docuseries, I bet.
yeah, and that's why I've laid off of getting help with a lawyer, because I'm like, okay, at this point, I've given my all
Mhm.
and nothing's happening. And so maybe now with this book, a young lawyer might pick it up and be like, oh, okay, like they'll take it on or whatever. I think
Yeah.
that's where it's going to happen. But um, I'm about 11, 12 chapters in. I'm actually on Clubhouse, which is another social media app. And I go into a room every other week and I actually read chapters of my book. She allows me to read chapters of my book and tell my story, which is really awesome. So I just read whatever chapters I've written, whether they're edited or not edited, and just so the people are aware, like this is what went on. I will be giving details of what went on behind the closed doors of Praise, Power, and Prayer, and what went on the doors behind the closed doors of my aunt's home. And so, yeah, I'm gonna be self-publishing. I don't. I have mixed feelings with the whole publishing thing because I don't want media taking this and twisting it.
Mhm.
And I've read some really good books of other girls leaving religion and just like Ginger Duggar, okay? Like I don't want media twisting it. I don't want it being twisted the wrong way.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm like, I think I'm going to go the self-publishing way. I am editing my book myself. I had an editor and I had to let her go just because she wanted more comical stuff in the book. And I'm like, that's not what this book is about. And that's not honoring to me or my sister. And so I'm going to be editing myself. I'm going to be self-publishing. I don't have any idea how to go about that or do that, but when the time
Yeah.
comes, you know, we'll get there. I guess
Yeah.
we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But
Well,
yeah,
I wanna just thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I think you are an incredibly strong person. I am so thankful that you came on to share this story, and you're incredibly brave too, and I hope you know it's and people hearing your story that may have gone through abuse or anything similar to this, you're an inspiration to them. So I just want you to know that, and you should take that away with you.
thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. Yeah, it's never easy to talk about, but you got to talk about it, right?
Yeah. Well, whenever you do have your book come out, please come back on my show. I will help you promote the hell out of it to make sure we get people
Absolutely.
keep people to go and buy it and to read your story. So, but you're a fantastic person, and just know that, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for allowing me to share my story.
And everybody, be sure give us your Instagram and your TikTok name one more time, and we'll have people
Uh,
go out and make sure they follow you.
yeah, my Instagram is religious cult survivor 1006, and then my TikTok is religious cult survivor '06.
Great. Thanks everybody for listening. Thank you, Heather, for being on, and
Thank
we'll
you.
talk to you guys next week. So, thank you so much.